So location maps to an IP address. An IP address is where that code is actually stored. And IP addresses are all in break down to these sets of 4 numbers that are between 0 and 255. And the reason it's 255 is that all breaks down into one single like unit of binary. It holds up to 8 binary digits, which maps to us as the numbers 0 to 255. So basically, what we're doing is translating something that's human readable that we can search for in the URL to something that is readable by the computer. So again, this idea of communication between a human and a computer. After that, along with that, we found the location, and then we're also sending an action. And an action can be one of 4 things, and they are summed up by the adorable acronym CRUD. And the CRUD stands for create, read, update, and delete. So those are the 4 actions that you could potentially do on a web page. So if you're a user on a web app, meaning you can log in and create information, you can log in, you can create a user name, you can, like my example earlier from Zoom, you can create a meeting. This is an action that is taken and stored on the server. And that has to be dictated by the developer in this URL or in this process of making a request. Read is just, hey, I want to see information back on the page. Update and delete, of course, perform the appropriate actions. So we get there, we've found the information, or we've found the place where that code lives. We've given it the correct instructions. And then what comes back is the response code, which is 2 parts, the response, which is 2 parts, a code and a payload. And response codes are basically tools that developers use to provide information about the request response cycle. And every single request gets a response. Sometimes those responses are successes and sometimes they are not. But by giving those responses specific codes, developers can tell their application what to do. Because if a response code says, hey, you're good, we can go ahead and load the page. But if not, if something goes wrong, we should tell our users that there's a problem rather than just leaving them with a blank page or a broken application of some kind. There's this really adorable website that gives cat pictures for all of the different response codes. So a 200 is, it's fine. It's a response code that means like, hey, go ahead and load the page, but it's telling you that there's no content coming with the page. And so that means that it was probably a create action. So this is kind of a cute meme. A 400 level response is an error code, meaning that something went wrong. So in this case, the request entity too large. But a really common one that you will see is a 404. I'm sure all of you have come across this at some point. It's sort of the catch-all of something went wrong error codes. But the reason that we have these is because developers are responsible for what happens even when their code doesn't work as intended or something is wrong with the server. And so response codes is, or creating an experience for your user, even if something went wrong, is called coding for the unhappy path. Meaning it didn't work out, but you still have to make your user want to hang out on your page. And so something like this is the GitHub error page. It's still kind of cute. It's engaging with the user. You don't feel like you broke the application. And it also, more importantly, gives you a bunch of links and a search bar to get back on the right track. And so that's an important part of development as well, is not only what happens when you're coding something and it turns out exactly the way you expect, but what happens when it doesn't. So then we made the response or the request, we got to where we wanted, response comes back with a code, but the other part of the response, as long as everything is the code says that we're all good, is that we get the payload. And so the payload in most cases, well, in pretty much all cases, is wrapped around inside of HTTP, which is the hypertext transfer protocol. And what we get back is the markup language HTML. So going back to our 3 fundamental internet front-to-end internet languages, HTML is number 1. Everything you see on a website, on a mobile, all of it is wrapped up and delivered inside of HTML.